Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and today we're doing something a little bit interesting, considering that a a candidate for Congress won. I wanted to do something very specific, and by the way, that candidate is now Representative-elect Burgess Owens from Utah's fourth congressional district. Um, he's won his race against he won his election against Ben McAdams, and I wanted to see if there was any trend that I could identify in professional athletes turned politician. I wanted to see if athletic success had anything to do with athletic success the uh, in U.S. politics, who was going to be more influential, whether or not there was a noticeable trend among athletes to favor one party over another or certain types of positions over another. And of the 34 politicians I was able to find who had been professional athletes. So, sorry to a few of the people on this list. I will be unfortunately skipping over them. Um, I wanted to see if there was favoritism of one party over another. If we look at track and field, for example, Republicans outnumbered Democrats 4-2. And in the NFL, it's 7-5 with three who were either members of both parties, are in nonpartisan positions, are independents, or were from a third party. And there was three of those. Hockey, there is literally one, and yeah, that guy is the mayor of a city in North Dakota. And then you have basketball, which is, other than one person, exclusively Democratic. And that one person is, if I remember correctly, he's an independent in New Jersey. Major League Baseball is 4-1 for the Republicans, and in other sports, which is martial arts and um, WWF, well, one of them was a Democrat and is now currently a Republican, even though he's been out of politics since 2005. And the other is Jesse Ventura. And honestly, can't really talk about this. And there's actually another that I haven't included because I can't really place him as a Democrat or a Republican. I could put him as an independent, and that would be the late U.S. Supreme Court Justice Byron White, who it's even difficult to tell what his ideology was on the court because there were some things he favored that would expand government power massively. But he also took some conservative positions. He also took some very liberal positions. For example, he voted against, he was in the dissent in Miranda v. Arizona, and he was also in the dissent in Roe v. Wade, along with the Republican appointee William Rehnquist, who would later be Chief Justice. And Byron White was a JFK appointee. Actually, kind of fitting. The friendship between JFK and Richard Nixon is something that actually should be discussed because they were surprisingly close friends. And another historian I was talking to at one point said, hey, here's a question. Who was more conservative, JFK or Richard Nixon? And it's actually a very interesting question to talk about from a historical perspective. Anyway, before I get too far into this, likes, comments, subscriptions, they always do help, and I greatly appreciate it. We're damn close to hitting 600 subscribers, and I'd love to hit it by the end of the month. So let's talk about some of the major ones, and I think the most influential athlete turned politician is Jack Kemp, who was the, as you can see, the 9th Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. He was a congressman for nearly 20 years. And he wound up being actually in 3 different districts during his tenure. And if we scroll down past all that and talk about his political career, weirdly enough, he was kind of a proto-libertarian in a lot of ways, at least in terms of the Republican Party version of libertarianism. He was also very much into racial equality. He supported affirmative action. He was known for believing in trying to help urban communities and the inner cities. It's why Bush chose him for Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. And he was the person who authored the House of Representatives version of what would later become known as the Reagan tax cuts. And like any good libertarian-leaning person, he supported the gold standard. He spoke for civil rights legislation, and he wanted urban enterprise zones, as he called them, what Tim Scott would now call opportunity zones. And there were people who actually criticized him for sounding like a very liberal Democrat, especially considering he wanted to protect rights for illegal immigrants in a lot of cases, and was perfectly okay with, gay rights and all that stuff. He was kind of his own thing, honestly. But he was definitely a staunch supply-sider. And we move on to a Hall of Famer from the NFL, Steve Largent, who, let's just say, if we scroll down, this election right here, the 2002 Oklahoma gubernatorial election, that deserves its own video. But Steve Largent was kind of his own thing in Congress. He was on the very conservative side of the Republican Party, and he authored one bill that I very much wish had passed, and that was a bill to eliminate the income tax. By the way, a quick aside to talk about Jack Kemp again. There was actually a time when he was considered the heir apparent to Ronald Reagan rather than George Bush. Scrolling down past a few, Alan Page was a Supreme Court justice. When I say Supreme Court justice, I mean Minnesota State Supreme Court. He wound up being an associate justice on the Minnesota State Supreme Court for quite some time. 22 years, I think. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything on the opinions he wrote, but he was also one of those who went to school to play school, kind of like Burgess Owens, who actually has a Bachelor of Science in Biology and Chemistry. So, yeah. Alan Page went to school to play school, and he studied law while playing in the NFL and started his legal practice while playing in the NFL. So, yeah. Then we go to John Runyon, who was swept in during the Republican wave year of 2010 and was a fairly moderate member of the House Republican caucus during that time frame, and declined to run for re-election in 2014 because he was not a fan of the government shutdown. And Runyon also was, he never lost an election. Look at a few others, and there's quite some interesting people up there, including John Tenner, who instituted the congressional baseball game while he was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and then he later became the governor of Pennsylvania. And he was from the early days of Major League Baseball in the 1880s. And then, of course, we get to Jesse the Mind Ventura, who, let's just say his career is pretty interesting, too. But there are honestly quite a few of these who deserve their own video. And maybe I will do one on Jack Kemp, because that one truly is very interesting. Because I think Jack Kemp is more known for his time in Congress and in government and politics more than his days as a professional football player. So, yeah. Generally speaking, if you're a professional athlete and you run for office, there's about a 50% chance you're a Republican, mid-40% chance you're a Democrat, and then almost a 10% chance that you are an independent or flip parties at some point. And the only sport that favors the Democrats in terms of total partisanship is basketball. And I wouldn't be... And honestly, that one is kind of shocking considering track and field. Is not exactly what you would expect for a Republican to be doing, but hey, who knows. And other sports are just their own ball of, I'll say, weird. One flipped parties, and the other is Jesse Ventura, who has only ever done third-party stuff, so go figure. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. I can talk much more in depth about a lot of this stuff, and if you want to see anything on, say, the history of the congressional baseball game, just leave a comment on that. I think it'd be a very fun video to do, because some cool stuff has happened during that as well. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you all next time. Take it easy. Bye-bye.